Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today, excuse me, I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and why Dungeons and Dragons products hit so hard and absolutely dominate the industry, and the part that the OSR is missing to catch up. So, first of all, Larry, let me very quickly explain why this matters. So, 2023 OGL controversy, massive change in the history of Dungeons and Dragons and in the history of the OSR and in the history of the indies, right? And I think what really happened is, in the light of the 23 OGL controversy, there was previously this idea, and you still hear it from people, and they're like, "Kumbaya, live and let live, and you can play your game, we'll play our game, and everything's going to work out fine, and everybody's going to benefit." And I think I never believed that in the beginning, and I think 2023 OGL controversy just made that an utterly ridiculous belief. And the reality is, we know where we are now is it's contested ground, right? Like, so basically, the entire tabletop role-playing game industry, the OSRs are like, hey, we need the same people as the D&D people, and if they buy a D&D product, they're not going to buy an OSR product, and if we buy an OSR product, they're not going to buy a D&D product. And on the OSR side, you could see this very strongly. They're like, we're going to pay attention to every D&D product, and we're going to complain about every D&D product, and we're going to be very picayune and tear them down, but we're not going to buy them, right? Like, and I think D&D, some people buy D&D products, and they might buy an OSR product here and there, but the reality is, I think now more than ever, the kumbaya is done. The contested ground, understanding the tabletop role-playing game space as contested ground, and and D&D is going to try to keep a 70-80% share and keep TSR in the dirt at 10 or 20% if they even have that much, right? And but the OSR is like, we're tired of being in the shadow. ShadowDark RPG. We're tired of being in the shadow of Dungeons and Dragons, and we really want, we're really a copy of it, and it's hard for us to progress when the original's right there, and it's hardback and shiny and literally color, and we're trying to sell black and white art and stuff that looks terrible, and people have to ask, did you just not try? And they're like, oh, we really tried. It's just an homage to the 80s, right? Like, it's a whole thing, right? So and so now the OSR is legit trying. ShadowDark RPG is the premier, in my humble opinion, is the premier product in the OSR's attempt to unseat Dungeons & Dragons 5e, right? Like modern Dungeons & Dragons. And I don't think Kelsey Dion, the creator, intended it that way, but the OSR community is like, this is a self-identified OSR game. It's brand new, and it's better than anything we currently have. And we're trying to beat Dungeons & Dragons with a bunch of old junk from closets that already got beat by D&D. At least this is new and fresh and innovative and has a really interesting creator, right? So that is it is on the front lines of this virtual contested ground, right? And so what's interesting is, why does D&D continue with every D&D canon hardback, close to every, not every, Radiant Citadel was a loss, why does it continue to just crush, right? And I think the answer is, I think I found the answer. Let me present it to you now. So I follow a film critic by the name of Patrick Willems, and if you go over on his channel, you will find a video there that says how to analyze film, all right? And it's Film Studies 101, and he breaks down film studies in an hour, right? And he says, when you analyze film, you look at it through a lens, and there are many lenses, right? And one of those lenses is film history, right? And so what he said is that basically, and he talked about Home Alone, right? Home Alone is written and produced by John Hughes. And what he explained is that if Home Alone, right, you can look at Home Alone and go, this is a good movie. And an inexperienced person, an unwise person, an unsophisticated person can watch Home Alone and be like, oh, that was funny, I enjoyed it, I had a good time watching this film, right? But if you are the exact opposite, if you are wise, if you are sophisticated, if you are experienced, right, and you understand even remotely the film history, you will see, oh my gosh, John Hughes is calling out movies, silent film, classic film, popular film, and making direct homages within this to film history itself, right? And this is the point. Like, we just got this with Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, right? If you buy that, you get yourself a nice, fun adventure. But holy cows, like, if you understand Dungeons & Dragons history, right, past, present, and future, you understand that F. Wesley Sneijder is, like, fully consumed everything Hickman and Weiss ever made, or the core of it, and understood it, and then improved it, right? And that it's absolutely brilliant, and it works on many, many layers, right? Whereas the OSR, when they come, they are so far behind Dungeons and Dragons. First of all, they've lost like two decades. They're only 2 or 3 decades. They're not 5 decades old. So they're behind by 2 decades, and they can't reference their own OSR history because nobody knows any of their wins, right? So their games only play for, they only impress an inexperienced, unwise, unsophisticated game master, right? And any wise, sophisticated, experienced game master is going to be like, this doesn't reference anything. It's empty. It's void, right? And they will say, "Oh, I see you used the black and white from Dungeons and Dragons back there," but the reality is you're just doing that out of preference. You're not making a statement, right? And so that's the issue. Is right now where the OSR is, and they're 2, 3, 4 decades away from building a history that is distinct from Dungeons and Dragons that they have any hope of even referencing, right? And right now, their history is such a tattered shred of it's not a coat you can put on. It's a tatterdemalion shred of GarageBand energy nonsense, right? And they really can't even reference any of their own wins because nobody even knows any OSR wins, right? And so then they get stuck trying to reference Dungeons and Dragons, but they're so limited in scope, and they're like, we only want to reference, these old Dungeons and Dragons items, and fundamentally, they don't want to deal with any of the analysis or any of the overarching issues, and they don't even want to think about the lenses of design, of tabletop role-playing game design, right? And so that's it. And you hear it from them all the time. They're like, I just want to make a good game. It doesn't matter to me who created it. It doesn't matter to me. Is it a good game or not? And what they're not understanding is all this art is being created, and it is not divorced from its history of creation. It's simply not. It's simply not, and so there's, you run into this issue of you get where they're not willing to do artiste work, right? They're just like, I just want to make a cheeseburger, and it's going to be a good cheeseburger. And the reality is, and where they get stuck, and the reason why they don't understand why they're not progressing, is what they're building that is not paying hyper close attention to where it fits within OSR history, right? What is the past of OSR? What is the present of OSR? And what will the future of OSR be? Whereas D&D canon hardback, when these things are made, they are very aware, right? Wild Beyond the Witchlight, right? They're like, oh, we should put Warduke in here. That's D&D past, right? Oh, and we're going to make it so that you can complete this without doing any combat. That's D&D present, right? And it's Jeremy Crawford and Christopher Perkins working on this book, who are the future of Dungeons & Dragons, right? And they're going to help craft the future. And it is completely aware of its own history, right? Whereas the OSR doesn't even have any recognition that they even need to build a strong history, a strong present, and a strong future, right? So that's, I think, why OSR continues to fail, even as they struggle to do anything meaningful and anything that can serve as an actual real competitor to Dungeons & Dragons. Everywhere that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.